There's a moment in every relationship where you realize the person in front of you is not the person you thought they were, not because they changed, but because they finally stopped pretending. And the worst part is knowing that someone you love may have been acting the entire time. The person who said forever might have been performing a character, and you were the only audience that mattered. Carl Jung understood something that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. The person claiming to love you might not even know themselves well enough to love anything. They're loving a version of you they invented. And when that invention falls apart, they disappear. This is not a failure of love. This is the architecture of false love itself. When someone says they love you, they're not telling you about you. They're telling you about themselves. They're revealing what they need, what they're running from, what they desperately want to believe about who they are. Jung called this the shadow, the part of ourselves we refuse to see. The traits we despise in others are often the ones we've buried so deep inside ourselves that we can't recognize them anymore. We project them outward. We find someone to hate so we don't have to hate ourselves. And sometimes, backwards as it sounds, we find someone to love for the exact same reason. Think about the people in your life who claim to love you unconditionally. Watch them carefully. When you disagree with them, does their love change? When you refuse to be who they need you to be, do they withdraw? That's not love. That's a transaction wearing love's mask. They love the role you play in their life. They love how you make them feel about themselves. The moment you stop being useful to that the love evaporates like it was never there. This is the dark truth no one wants to hear. Most people don't love you. They love what you represent. They love the mirror you hold up to them. They love the feeling of being someone's everything. But the second you become complicated, the second you have needs that don't center them, the performance ends. Because their love was never about you. It was about them practicing being the kind of person they wish they were. Jung spent his life studying this gap between who we pretend to be and who we actually are. He called the persona the mask we wear for the world. We all have one. But some people never take it off. Not even alone. Not even with the people closest to them. They've worn the mask so long that they've forgotten what's underneath. So when they tell you they love you, they mean it. In that moment, they genuinely do. But it's the mask speaking. And masks can't sustain love. Masks can only perform it. The people who pretend to love you are usually the ones most terrified of being truly known. Because if you really saw them, if you understood the chaos and contradiction and weakness beneath the surface, you might leave. So they keep you at a distance disguised as intimacy. They share secrets, but never vulnerability. They tell you everything except the things that matter. They give you access to their life, but never their actual self. And here's where it gets dangerous. Because if you love them back, if you start believing the performance, you begin contorting yourself to fit inside it. You become smaller. You learn to ignore the parts of yourself that threaten their illusion. You become complicit in their self-deception. You agree to love a character instead of a human. And that agreement slowly poisons everything real about you. You knew that true intimacy requires something most people are too fragile to offer. The courage to be seen. Not the carefully curated version of yourself that photographs well and sounds good in conversation. The actual you, the contradiction, the failures, the desires that don't make sense, the parts of you that scare you, the dreams that seem impossible. That's where real love lives, in the willingness to be known completely and stay anyway. But most people have never learned this. They were raised by people who also wore masks. They learned early that love was conditional, that acceptance had terms and conditions, that showing too much of yourself resulted in rejection or punishment. So they built their own masks and never questioned why. They got so good at pretending that they genuinely believe they're being authentic. They can convince themselves and everyone around them that the performance is the real thing. Notice the people who always need to be right, the ones who can never admit fault, the ones who turn every conversation back to themselves. The ones who love you only when you're useful, only when you're playing the role they assigned you. These are not cold people. They're not even bad people. They're trapped people. They're so disconnected from their actual selves that they can only experience the world through projection. They can only love through the lens of their own neurosis. Jung warned that the unexamined life leads to the unexamined relationship. Most people never stop to ask themselves why they love who they love. They don't investigate their own pattern. They don't wonder why they're attracted to unavailable people or why they keep choosing people who hurt them the same way they were hurt as children. They just repeat the cycle and call it fate. They pretend they have no control. They accept the performance as inevitable. But the people who do the work, who actually look at themselves, who ask the hard questions about why they believe what they believe and want what they want, they discover something terrifying and liberating at the same time. They're mostly running on programming they didn't write. They're acting out scripts written by people who hurt them. They're loving the way they were taught to love, which usually means they're not loving at all. Here's the warning hidden inside this truth. If you're with someone who can't look at themselves, who gets defensive when you suggest they might be responsible for their own pain, who blames everyone else for the patterns in their life, you're with someone who will never be able to love you genuinely. They'll love the idea of you. They'll love how you make them feel, but they'll never love you because they can't. The equipment isn't there. The capacity for real self-reflection, the foundation of genuine love, is simply absent. And the saddest part is that these people are suffering too. They're trapped inside their own performance, convinced that if they ever let the masks, they'll be destroyed. They've been running from themselves for so long that they've forgotten what they were running from. They only know how to keep running. Jung's greatest insight was this: the only way forward is integration. You have to look at the parts of yourself you hate. You have to acknowledge the shadow. You have to admit that you're not the person you pretend to be. And you have to do this not to punish yourself, but to free yourself. Because the parts of you that you deny don't disappear. They just get stronger. They leak out in unconscious ways. They sabotage your relationship. They make you sick. When someone truly loves you, they're doing this work. They're looking at themselves. They're admitting their failure. They're changing their behavior based on what they learn. They're becoming more honest, not more perfect. Real love isn't about never hurting the person you love. It's about being conscious enough to notice when you do and having the integrity to actually change. The people who pretend to love you usually aren't even aware they're pretending. That's what makes it so dangerous. They're not calculated liars. They're people running on autopilot, performing scripts they never chose, too afraid to look at why they're so terrified of being known. And if you love them, if you see their fear, the cruelest thing you can do is enable the performance. The kindest thing you can do is stop accepting it. This doesn't mean you should leave every relation. It means you should stop settling for performance. Stop accepting words without change. Stop believing that someone loves you while they're simultaneously showing you through their actions that you don't matter as much as their comfort. Stop trying to convince someone to see you by being smaller and quieter and more accommodating. If they love you, they will do the work to actually know you. They will face their own fear. They will look at their own shadow. And if they won't, that's not a reflection on you. That's a statement about their capacity. Some people are too broken to be honest. Some people are too scared to be real. Some people will go their entire lives performing love instead of feeling it. That's their tragedy. It doesn't have to be yours. The dark truth about people who pretend to love you is that they're not intentionally hurting you. They're just incapable of anything else. They're doing the only thing they know how to do. They're surviving the only way they learn. But your job is not to heal them by accepting their performance. Your job is to know the difference between someone performing and someone showing up. Someone saying they love you and someone actually loving you. That difference will save your life. Pay attention to it.